Well, hello there, and welcome back to the story of us from cosmic dawn to the depths of being. I'm your host, Jeff Ellison, and today's episode is titled, Let It Be Enough. And this conversation began a few months ago in really the most organic kind of way. I met our guest, Melanie Love, at an event hosted by my neighbor and season one guest, Molly Jones. It was one of those gatherings where you expect a little small talk, but instead you find some shared purpose, some common ground. Melanie and Jessica and I showed up at the same time, and we connected almost immediately. We discovered we had something really meaningful in common. My work, dedicated to those that suffer from chronic, debilitating pain conditions, Jessica's career in the physical therapy world, and Melanie's deep, sincere passion for supporting those like herself that live each day with chronic pain. There was an instant sense that her story needed to be shared on this podcast. And then there was the timing. So, as luck would have it, we stayed connected over the past few months and ended up recording this episode from my kitchen table on Valentine's Day. And yeah, her last name's Love. And she joked that with a name like Love, you had two options. You either lean into it or you avoid it altogether. Melanie leaned into it. She showed up in a beautiful red and pink sweater with an enormous heart on the front. And that spirit carried us throughout the entire conversation, from that knock on the door to the time we spent chatting with the mics turned off. Man, it was a great way to spend a Saturday morning. Now, Melanie's story begins in Calgary, Canada. She reflects beautifully on the influence her grandparents had on her upbringing. And if you listen closely, you can hear how those early foundations shaped the way she approaches her life today. Professionally, Melanie built an impressive career in Canada. You have to listen to this. She served as an investment manager and a research analyst in the international energy exploration and production sector. Yeah, it's a it's a mouthful. But listening to her describe that chapter of her life, the precision, the discipline, and the intellectual depth, you're going to quickly realize how capable and thoughtful of a person she is. It was remarkable to hear her articulate the experience so clearly to us. She would be probably just as comfortable on a Bloomberg or IMF or, I don't know, the Economist podcast as she was on ours. But the heart of this episode is really about healing and transition. Melanie shares her journey with an Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome diagnosis, EDS, and how that reality reshaped her priorities and her perspective. I think our health has a way of clarifying what really matters to us. It forces us to reflect, and it invites sometimes reinvention. In her case, it led to a move to the great state of Kentucky and a decision to devote this season of her life to building something new, a small business she calls Unblock. Now, Unblock is designed to help people relieve pain and restore their mobility. You'll hear Melanie talk about it. We talked also about the origin story and the challenges of launching a new company. We also talked about the emotional courage it takes to kind of start over again and the deeper mission behind it. If you'd like to hear more about her work, I encourage you to visit her website, theunblock.shop. That's theunblock.shop. It's a great website. It's lots of great content. It's thoughtful, it's purpose driven, and it's rooted in lived experience. The theme that stayed with me, though, throughout our conversation and inspired the title is the idea of just let it be enough. Allowing the chapter you're writing today to be enough. Allowing your effort, your personal growth, the work you do every day, even if it looks different than you once imagined it would, let that be meaningful. Let that be enough. And Melody embodies that mindset with both grace and conviction. I'm deeply grateful for her honesty, the intelligence she brought to the table, and her willingness to share both her professional accomplishments and her personal evolution with you and me and the Story of Us project. So, whether you're navigating change or you're building something new, or man, you're simply trying to take the next right step, I hope this conversation resonates. Here's my discussion with Miss Melanie Love. Melanie, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you. As someone with the last name Love, I have to lean in or not. So,
Well, you got the heart sweater on. You're fully leaned in.
yes, I'm here for the chocolate, really.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for joining me. It's a wonderful day for this. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show. We got to meet very randomly just next door through our mutual friend Molly Jones, right?
We totally did. I was thinking about the chain of events that had to happen for us to meet and the way the universe sometimes works that way. And it's a good one.
Yeah, no, that's the if you're looking
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You meet people all along the way that you connect with. And I immediately connected with you. We were there for some QPR training as a follow up, really, to Molly being on our podcast and some of the things that she was really passionate about. And we met at her house, and you started to tell your story. And I said, hey, Melanie, would you be on my show? It's super cool. So I'm so glad you said yes.
I'm so glad you asked. I enjoyed our conversation. I was so glad that I showed up for Molly's important work and what she does at the Pete Foundation. And it was just, I love it when the universe conspires to bring good people together.
That's right. You just got to keep looking, but it's out there,
Yeah.
and you got to take advantage of your opportunities. So, again, thank you. I got to hear a little bit of your story, but I think let's jump in. This is the story of us from cosmic dawn to the depths of being. So let's start off with Melanie. Tell us your story.
Well, I'm my story is one of those things that I think only makes sense when I look at it now and see how all the threads intertwined and to go, I had no idea that was going to happen or how this related or what. And now that I'm 52, I can see that, oh, that's how that happened, or that's why I needed to go through that. So I am Canadian. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I ended up here in Kentucky. I like to say it was for a partnership opportunity. That's code for there was a relationship that we were working on, uh, and it had business aspects and personal aspects. But there was a plot twist, and I decided that the universe brought me here for some reason, and that I was gonna bloom where I was planted. So I'm here for the adventure and just to see what life has.
And Kentuckians treating you pretty good.
Yeah, it's people are very friendly. I do enjoy the weather, the what we experienced for the past 2 weeks. So we had a whole bunch of snow, and yeah, that's 5 or 6 months of my life. So for me, it was just another February day, but for the rest of you, it was something to contend with. But we know how to snow. You're not built for this, and you don't need to be.
I have known a few Canadians along the way, and I just am in love with you guys. I don't know. I know certainly not all Canadians are created equal, right? They're not all the same, but you guys just have such warmth about you. Tell me more. Let's dig in a little bit about what it was like growing up in Canada.
So growing up in Calgary, as it was in a way, I traded one river city with a festival culture and a horsey culture festival for another. But when I was growing up, Calgary's only 500,000 people, so it was a bigger small city like Louisville. It's a city where everybody knows everybody. It's 2 or 3 degrees of separation max, and it's a city where people because it's so young. It was only founded in like 1867 or something like that. It's a very, or sorry, 1876. Anyways, young. And so it doesn't have that deep, rich history. And it was growing so fast that there was a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. And so it grew really fast. It's almost a 1.5 million now. So, but Calgary it's an outdoorsy city. People in Calgary are connected more by what they do when they're not at work than what they do at work, which I've been in other cities. I've lived in Toronto, and Toronto is not that. With all the love in the world, the lawyers and the investment bankers tend to hang out with the lawyers and the investment bankers, and it tends to be a little more echelon and stratified. Calgary is a city where if you're a mountain biker, your mountain biker friends will be a bike courier, a corporate lawyer, an accountant, somebody who, like you'll get a wide mix of people, and people are more defined by what they do when they're not working.
So what was your family, what did your parents do growing up?
My dad, so I, in a way, I consider my grandparents my parents because my mom was very young when she had me. And in a way, she was a little bit like my nutty older sister because she was barely 20. I mean, she had no business having kids, but there we were. It was the 70s, and, the ads on TV. Do you know where your kids are at night? No, right? Like come home when the street lights are on, the whole drink from the hose thing because we had to because we weren't allowed in the house, right? That's the
I
that
lived it. I was
right.
there.
We
Yeah.
Yeah, we lived it, right? So there's all of that. So my grandparents were super influential for me. And my grandfather was a gregarious, larger than life human. So and literally, he was 6'5", 265, played football, was recruited into wrestling, or they tried to, and he was the shortest of his four brothers. So I find it very entertaining when tall men try and stand over and dominate me, because the people who loved me most in the world, from the time I was, itty bitty, were massive humans. And so, yeah, height does not. And yeah, so he was a gregarious person. He was into real estate uh, and just loved to build community, and also was very deeply um, religious in a sense, but did not go to church. He practiced in his own home and had his own way of doing that. But also he was a Mason, and that, so practice service through there. But also the idea, he was part of the original OG Augmandino, all of the powers of the mind,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
saw how they correlated to biblical type things. And my grandma she grew up on the farm, so she moved to the big city, and she was a beautiful woman. And both of them are definitely extroverts. They liked to entertain. They liked to go out and see and be seen and have nice clothes and all that good stuff. So not outdoorsy people. I did not get my love of the outdoors from them, but yeah, they were. And but grandma loved us kids dearly. And if she could have been, I think, had she known that it existed, she thought she wanted to be a pharmacist, but really, I grew up through them in vitamin stores. They would haul me off to the health food store and try and pass off carob as chocolate, right?
Yeah, no.
If you know, you know, right? It's
Right.
not the same. And so, but she would give us vitamins every day. So since I was 5, I've known why I needed to take vitamin A and what vitamin D does, and that you need K to process it and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, so you started your journey. Did you go to college?
I did. I have a degree in economics
Okay.
with um, a business minor, and then I went on to do a chartered financial analyst. So that's like a chartered accountant, but for investment finance. And so I make the distinction between finance and accounting. The accountants are more backwards looking. They are good at describing what happened, whereas finance tends to be more forward looking and more forecasting and sensitivity analysis and scenarios.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated because I have a finance degree from
Mm,
the University of Kentucky.
there you go.
I don't use it,
Yeah.
and I tell people all the time in my story that I don't. I remember being a senior in high school, and my kids now, they really took this college decision very seriously. We went to toured all these different colleges, and we looked at the pros and cons of all the various ones. But back in the mid '90s. I just remember kind of licking my finger and pointing to the University of Kentucky and going through the majors and saying, "Well, I don't know, my stepdad's into commercial real estate lending, and so I'll pick finance. It seemed to work for him, and I found myself at a bank, and then life took over.
Yeah.
And I'm just always interested from where you are now to where you were then. What interests you in economics and the business world?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a whole other, I could talk about that. But it's the way I think. I think the big hope of 2008 was that we were going to see the capital markets democratized, and instead the opposite happened. So when the small cap markets got decimated, when the access to capital and lending, and the reason the small cap markets got decimated was, of course, they ratcheted up to prevent the all of future scandals and future market collapses. They upregulated, and that makes it very expensive to operate as a small company and to access capital markets. So it became very expensive to be a public company. Also, the investment markets, and particularly the institutional markets, just wanted to skew to more liquidity. They wanted the bigger market caps so that if they wanted to get out, they had an easy exit hatch. If you have a smaller cap company, sometimes liquidity is harder to come by on the markets because they're smaller companies, so it's harder to find a buyer sometimes. And what we thought might happen out of 2008 did not happen. Instead, we have seen a concentration of wealth. We've seen the expansion of private equity, and and almost the access to capital is now very concentrated. It follows a very specific formula, and you no longer see smaller companies pursuing RTOs or IPOs or anything like that. Those doors were kicked shut as fast, that by the end of 2008, that party was over.
Melanie, I can't believe I asked that question and got that answer. I feel like you could be on Bloomberg or Meet the Press right now. You took your life in a very different direction, but it is very impressive. Now, so tell me, when did the trajectory of your life and that direction that you were going, when did that change?
It really changed. I took a detour into entrepreneurship, started to build a company that I ended up basically hating. And but the big thing was I had a concussion. So I hit my head in where was that? So I was visiting a factory in Vancouver. I had a clothing company for your friends with big boobs called More Front Room, because I was genetically endowed,
Great name.
and I got tired of standing next to guys in boardrooms and not being able, their stuff is all custom made and my stuff's held together with pins and tape. And God forbid I have to go on a same day trip with them, because getting through security was a whole, especially post 9/11, that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I realized though that I was building a company I hated. I was climbing the ladder, but my ladder was firmly on the wrong wall. And yeah, but I had a concussion visiting one of the factories. My body lacks a sense, or it doesn't lack it entirely. It's very poor proprioception. So my ability to tell where my head is in space is no bueno. So, which comes part and parcel, as I now know, as I did not know. I've always known I've been very bendy. I did not know that that is now Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is much more in the common vernacular than they certainly did not know anything about that in the 2000s or late 90s. But yeah, I hit my head, and uh, I was reaching out a car door. I had been given this fancy rental car. What I'd rented was not available, and I was given a Dodge Challenger Charger, but a big muscle car. I
Yeah.
mean, the people, and so I was leaning out, and I thought I was pushing up, and no, I pushed straight up, and I clocked my head on the car door hard enough to make it bleed. And a couple of days later, all of a sudden, I felt like I was hungover. The world was spinning. I had really, really bad balance, and I was just nauseous. And that carried on for the better part of 9 months. And no amount of physio or uh, I saw chiros, neurochiros, physio, and that was the first of what ended up being five back-to-back MMTBIs, mild to moderate traumatic brain injuries. And yeah, so that's when the trajectory really changed. And in 2017, I never thought I'd work again.
So was it that series of concussions when you first were able to suspect something more systemic was happening?
Um, yeah, though it's interesting. I didn't realize the systemic thing until later. And it wasn't until you and I have some diagnosis twins, but it wasn't until 2023 when I figured out that I was born with my S1 not fused, which is called Bertolotti syndrome, which explained why I've had chronic low back pain my entire life. But I didn't know that that was a thing. And then so I was exploring, well, what are my options, as you two have probably experienced? Well, am I going to do PRP, platelet replacement protocol?
That's
Protocol?
why they call it
Yeah,
PRP. Yeah,
PRP. Yeah, exactly. So that we
it's
don't
a
have to
mouthful.
sputter it all over. Or prolotherapy, right? When they do
Yep.
the sugar injections to help tighten everything up. And so I asked the ortho surgeon, and she said, well, She goes, "Well, your Ehlers-Danlos, your body does not synthesize collagen properly, so those are contraindicated for you." And I said, "Hold up, wait, what? What did you?" I said, "How do you know? Tell me more. Like, say more, please." And she said, "Well, you're Ehlers-Danlos." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" She goes, "Well, I can pretty well tell just from how you're sitting. You're so mobile." But she said, "Do you have weird drug interactions?" I said, "All the time. I have, for me, it's upside down day. If you give me something that's supposed to make me sleepy, it'll make me wired." One of my neurologists in the journeys of, as you know, when you get concussions, you have multiple, just not multiple headaches, but multiple types of headaches. So you get the ocular migraines, or you have the tension headaches, or you sometimes at the same time. And so he had put me on one of a baby dose of amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant, but they use, I mean, when people say off label, we're a whole body. There's no such thing as side effects. There's just effects.
Right.
But, um, but yeah, he had given me an amitriptyline, and it had made me both depressed and suicidal. And when I went to see him, one, wasn't making a difference in my headaches, to which he said, "Oh, we're just going to increase your dose then.
Oh, because if a little bit doesn't work, more is better.
More is better when
Yeah.
I'm depressed and suicidal."
It's
So,
it's interesting in our chronic pain business. I've learned a lot from my physicians along the way, and one thing that is kind of the holy grail of medicine is, let's take for instance opioids, and one of the things that was described was that you know what you would like to do with medications, like the one that was prescribed to you, would be to pour some oil into your oil tank in the engine, right, to change the oil. But what we do is we bathe the whole engine in massive amounts of oil, hoping that some trickle down into the reservoir. And
mhm,
so I think a lot of physicians often do that, is they prescribe a conservative dose of whatever medication it is, hoping that it works, targeting, say, some low back pain or shoulder pain, but really they're bathing the entire body in it. And I love what you said, that no, there aren't there's no such thing as side effects. There are just full body effects of
yeah,
these medications. So, for listeners who have never heard of Ehlers-Danlos,
mhm.
how do you explain that in, we'll say, plain English?
Sure. If you know somebody who's really bendy, so there's a few hallmark tests, but the ability to be very flexible without needing to stretch. So I could stand up now and put my palms to the floor, or even the test when I was a kid. I could, when they make you touch your toes, and the old participation things, right?
Yeah,
Do you remember
right.
those? So those tests, and I could get my toes to the middle of my forearm, no problem. There's weird things. Drug interactions is another one, but yeah, it's classically hypermobility. There are, I think, 7 subtypes now. They're learning more and more about it. The latest research shows that it's not just a collagen, my body doesn't make collagen properly. It's a multisystemic, and it actually may have its roots and origins in the immune system, which is fascinating. And so that research
Wow.
was just published September of 2025, and there's more and more that we're learning more about it. But it yeah, it's a wild, but the things that it impacts. So for some people, they need to get, if you're very bendy, I recommend you getting your heart checked, because for some flavors of Ehlers-Danlos, those heart valves can be extra stretchy, and for those folks, cardio exercise is contraindicated.
Oh, wow.
You can have the widowmaker heart attack. That valve can just blow. And it's a mitral. You can get mitral valve prolapses. There's all sorts of organs falling out for women at certain ages. It can start as early in their 20s, but you can get uterine prolapse, where their body just lacks the ability to hold things together, and things just start falling out. So it's a wildly varied from person to person. But one of my friends has it. Her kid has it in her eyes.
Wow.
Soft teeth. So I always got shamed for, "Oh, my dentist, you're not flossing, you're not doing whatever else." Turns out that's also a hallmark symptom of
I
Ehlers-Danlos.
did a little bit of research, and it was fascinating to me that it's complicated, it's
Mm,
complex. It feels like this diagnosis is, 13 plus different disorders in some certain combination.
yeah.
I'm certain that it's probably more prevalent than most people know, and is it just now being more widely understood and diagnosed?
I think so. I mean, certainly I didn't hear anything about this. I was knew I was bendy, but I was just, oh, she's bendy. And also there's a 75%, I hate the word comorbidity, but a 75, we'll say coincidence of things like ADHD. So there's a neurological and how the brain processes information aspect to it. Some research shows that in EDS patients with ADHD, how their brain so again, science is always catching up. I'm not anti-science, I'm anti-hubris. The people that say we've discovered everything, we know everything, there's always frontiers. And when they discovered the glymphatic system, which is just the lymphatic system that goes to the brain, but they didn't think it did, so they had to call it something different, but it goes to the brain. But in people with EDS, they how the brain regulates that fluid is impaired. And so part of the work when I teach my classes, I have people do extra support, especially in the back of their neck, so the suboccipitals in particular, to make sure to help that fluid drain and to help that blood flow that they need. The other thing is the emotional thing that comes with it, because I did not know that it meant that I had more endorphin receptors than the average bear. And what that means is it means that mood regulation is a lot more difficult. If I have double the receptors, it takes more of what I need to keep me on an even level.
Well, it's one thing to be bendy, right? And a lot of people, I think, they misinterpret bendy as having a lot of elasticity in your muscles. You can stretch,
Mhm.
but this is about joints being
Instability.
instability, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that. And let's note, folks, I am not a doctor. Everything I am saying is things that I have learned. So if I am misquoting from someone
We'll
else,
put the asterisk
we'll
on
put the
this episode.
asterisk.
That's okay.
This is my experience. But yes, joint instability is huge. And it's part of what so much of muscle tightness. So Ehlers-Danlos people like me are almost have chronically what the biz would call hypertonic, but very tense muscles, and that is a protective mechanism.
Guarding,
It's guarding, yeah, and there's multi layers to that gardening or the guarding, which I now know, which are also super fascinating. But yeah, this whole it's an aspect for me to layer in that when I mobilize someone, I make sure that I stabilize them, because it's that protective mechanism, and that the more you're stretching, if you're getting that rebound effect, it might not be that you need to stretch it. There's something deeper to go on. It's the, well, if it doesn't work, more of it's not going to keep working, right? So
right?
let's try something new.
Interested to understand, oftentimes when people have these underlying symptoms that go undiagnosed for a long time, it explains so much when they finally get the diagnosis. So what did it feel like to receive confirmation of EDS back in 23? Did you feel relief, anger,
Yeah.
validation? Was there grief associated with it? I mean, can you explain the emotions that went through when you finally got a diagnosis? Was it like, well, at least now I know? What was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, I think yes to all of the above. It was a confluence of things. The S1 not being fused and that whole thing. I've had lower back x-rays before, which means that someone wasn't looking for it. And no,
Right.
right. When I was, yeah. So it's a combination of, oh, that makes so much sense. And then the validation. And then also just the degree of, I would say, medical gaslighting that those of us who have grown up with this type of things, because we do have weirdo reactions. I had a doctor say to me, oh, well, when I reported a reaction to something and they said, "Meh, well, I've never heard of that before." To which now spicier me would say, congratulations, you just did.
I tell you what, when you dig in, you dig in. You know your content, right? I love it. Um, so, do you think some of what you used to label before your diagnosis as anxiety, maybe, was actually structural instability?
Yeah, certainly some of the muscle tension would have been structural instability. I, at one point, because I was doing what people were telling me to do, I would do lots of hot yoga and and stretch and do all the things. And it got to the point that my low back and my low spine was so unstable that if I so much as sneezed without my knees bent, my SI would blow apart. And I would do, and then I would go back to the chiropractor, which was again one of the worst things I could have done, because the more the joints get manipulated, the more unstable they get, which I did not know, but I was doing what it's a long tail thing. So currently, the estimation is 10% of the population has EDS or some form of hypermobility. And what I understand is that hypermobility and EDS are not necessarily the same thing. EDS is thought to have a genetic component. I haven't had mine tested to know specifically which flavor. I have enough of the indicators to go, yeah, close enough. But yes, it made a whole lot of sense looking back for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things you shared with me in preparation for the show was that, yeah, like a lot of us, but to a much larger degree during COVID and around 2020, when a lot of this was going on, pre-diagnosis, um, but there was quite a bit of trauma for you personally. This was a very difficult time in your life.
Yeah.
When that trauma surfaced, how did you, or how do you now, knowing what you know, how do you discern what's emotional versus physical?
That's a great question. I mean, so I was, I think, 48 when someone asked me the question of, well, where do you feel that in your body? And I went, what are you talking about? They're like, sweetie, that's why they're called feelings. And I was like, what? No. And I did not know that my entire life I had been intellectualizing, and that feelings were, I was thinking about what I should be feeling, not necessarily feeling my feelings. And I think this ties on to, what having the tension in your body. There can be a few sources of tension. Instability is one, but trauma is another. And so there's this whole seminal work and this idea that the body keeps the score. Bessel van der Kolk is one. There's richer layers to that, but this whole idea that stuff gets stored in our body until later. And if I love the modern definition of trauma, that trauma is either too much, too fast, too little for too long, or both. And when I heard that, I was, oh, that makes so much sense. And if that's also not the modern definition of entrepreneurship, I don't know what is. On a side note, so if you have
Right.
entrepreneur friends, go and call them right now. They need they need a hug. But yeah, discerning what it really is, learning to. And if someone would have said this to me, you need to come home to your body. This whole you're embodied. But I was a big brain with a body for a taxi. Like I had good interoception, in the sense that that's a sense that tells us what's going on internally in our body. I could go to a chiropractor and go, oh, well, this part of my neck, and specifically it's C2 on the left and C6 on the right, and this is out here or there. Like that's very specific. And I didn't know at the time, but that's unusual. But that also, I think, comes with monitoring for that instability and
Yeah.
monitoring that pain. But what I wasn't monitoring was my feelings or how I felt about really anything.
Well, and I recognize now that that was kind of a trick question. I have spent, like you, a lot of time trying to help understand more about chronic pain.
Mm,
People who suffer from debilitating chronic conditions that really impact their quality of life. It's
mm,
something that I've been doing for 10 years now and have grown to love, and I've learned a lot from my physicians. I ask a lot of questions, and they're nice enough to continue to answer a lot of them. And there's a lot of consensus, but one of the things that I remember asking one of my physicians that's in the Cincinnati, kind of northern Kentucky market at the time, I asked him about this concept of people that come into our clinics that have underlying depression or anxiety. And they have always told me that feelings, with the FEEL, feel, can be perceived as pain. And I asked this question of one of my doctors, I said, how does that work? How
mhm.
can someone who's so depressed come in feeling as if they have chronic debilitating pain all over their body? And they said, well, Jeff, there's many examples I can give you of how emotion represents itself in physical sensation. So if you've ever been a little bit nervous to speak in front of someone, and you have the virtual butterflies in your stomach, or
Mhm.
your palms start sweating, That's emotion actually generating itself as physical sensation. And so I think for someone that has been diagnosed with EDS, I think it would be hard to understand what's physical and what's emotional because they're so closely connected.
They're so closely connected, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And I love Schibener's work, Howard Schibener, on chronic pain, and the I have uh, studying with Dr. Amy Apedian and her biology of trauma coursework has been so eye-opening in how trauma informs how the body functions, how it processes, how it experiences things, and the degree to which we are embodied. And I would say that coming out of a state of chronic functional freeze, which is a trauma response, you just get, and for me, I'm very lucky. I was stuck in Energizer Bunny doing mode. That is a very socially acceptable mode to get stuck in. I was stuck in a state of what we would call stress mode, but sympathetic activation. And so that's great. I have all the fuel all the time, but other people are not so lucky. They get stuck in a sense of collapse, which is it takes everything you have just to get out of bed and to function in the world. And their state of freeze is a permanent state, more or less, of collapse, where everything feels like you're moving through 5 feet of snow in a snowstorm, and it takes everything you have just to get out of bed. And my heart goes out to those people. And I'm very glad that I was not of that flavor. It doesn't make it more or less. It's it's just that work is as much an addiction and a way of coping as any other coping mechanism.
I think it's important for us all to remember when we get stuck, whether it's in the first state that you mentioned and overachieving, over accomplishment, bigger, faster, stronger, more, what
Mhm.
society tells us is very acceptable way of being frozen in time is just, showing up, putting in the work, out hustle it, outwork it. And you get trapped in that.
Mhm.
And then you have the other section. But for you, what could have been collapse you turned into curiosity and then you turned into creation, which I think is very powerful.
Okay.
Um, what would you, before we move on, what would you tell someone who's listening that suspects that they actually might have EDS?
Wow. I- I- oof.
Because they've probably experienced the same medical gaslighting.
Mhm.
They've probably been frustrated by misdiagnosis. They've probably tried things that intuitively they think would improve their condition, but
Yeah.
actually are counterproductive.
Yeah.
They've been through a lot.
Mhm.
They may feel like this might be the answer.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to them?
I'd say that there's quite a few good communities online. There's a lot of research coming out. There's an Ehlers-Danlos Society for one, so that's a good place to start. There's a few groups online that are publishing the research. I would say if you're stretching, stop it. That destabilization, even though it feels so good, and it's one of the things we're great at. So who doesn't like to be
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like I would walk into yoga
Accentuate the
and I'd be like,
positive, right?
I'm killing this, right? Like yeah, but it was just how my body was built. So stretching probably just, I'm not saying don't do it, but maybe don't. There's other ways to do that, which I think we'll probably get into in a moment. And also if especially the confluence of EDS and that ADHD scenario that can make it so with all the love in the world to normal physicians, I would say someone with a functional nutrition background can be a wealth of resource and information to help understand the neuroinflammation that is probably happening and especially on the ADHD side. So one of the go to, again, this is not medical advice. I'm just telling you what works for me, but phosphatidylcholine has been a game changer for me because I did not know I had ADHD until I did. And it wasn't until coming out of chronic freeze where my body had a choice of what speed I go. And then I didn't realize that, and of course, working in finance is a great place to mask that, right? Because everything's happening at 10 million miles an hour and it's
Right.
something different every day. But I didn't know that I had squirrels. I don't have ducks or rows. I have squirrels and they're at a rave, right? Like there was, and so my brain needs a little help to organize that. And, right. And so I would say functional nutrition and look up some of the EDS stuff. And there's like, some great questionnaires there that will point you in the right direction.
So it's been apparent that you've taught me so much about EDS, and I did a little bit of research that this hypermobility really is affecting the entire nervous system.
Mhm.
W- For you, what are your early warning signs that maybe you're pushing too hard?
Mm.
Because I think this is really important for EDS patients to understand, is really being able to understand when you're taking it a little too far, when you need some calm or you need some relaxation, you
Right.
may need to rest your body. For
Mm.
you, what are some of those early warning signs that you look for?
So it's interesting that in a way, all work is work. So there's physical work, there's mental work, there's emotional work. It's all work. Our body is always maximizing or it's optimizing to conserve as much energy as possible. So for those of us, especially if you're in the hustle culture, it's easy to blow past those. When you're first learning to come back into your body, one of the things people say is just start paying attention. Like go pee when you gotta go pee, like, start there sometimes. So, for me, noticing, I fatigue sneaks up very rapidly for people with EDS. Often, there's that lack of hydration aspect, that can go with, and I don't know if that relates to the fascia hydration, which doesn't perfectly correlate to, actual, but
There's thirst and there's cellular
there's
hydration. They're very
absolutely.
different things.
They're
Yeah.
very different things. They're related, but they're not the same. So I would say paying attention to the fatigue symptoms and then also learning how to calm and regulate the nervous system because the nervous system controls the show. And I talk about the nervous system a lot more than I used to because I feel like we were taught only half of the equation so much in so many aspects of life. We were only taught half the equation. And when I said to my own medical doctor that, I expected that my immune responses were going to get better as I carried through my trauma journey, that and she looked at me and sort of said, "Good luck with that." And I thought, hold on. Like, I guarantee that if I asked her what systems the nervous system controls, she would be able to answer that correctly. But when it came to actual practice of thinking that the nervous system informs how your immune system functions, there was a disconnect.
Wow. Okay, so I bet you've tried all the stuff, right? Over time, right?
Uh,
As a fellow chronic pain sufferer, I too have tried all the stuff.
mhm.
You do the dry needling, you do the physical therapy, you work on some non-narcotic medications, the ice baths, I've hot yoga. I actually even broke down about one of those inversion
Oh,
tables
yeah.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
I finally figured it out, but it's different for everyone else. But what I think is fascinating about your story is you're obviously very gifted when it comes to becoming educated, diving into topics, whether it's high finance or whether it's about regulating the nervous system. But we talked about it just a second ago. You mentioned that a lot of people with these complex chronic conditions can dive into collapse and get frozen in collapse. But you chose another path. You decided to get really curious about what was going on with your body, and through that, you blended your training and expertise in business and your entrepreneurial spirit. Now, this wasn't about more room up front. It was a little bit different than that. But somewhere along the way, I'm assuming you started block therapy for your own body, and then
Yeah.
ended up creating Unwind.
Yeah.
What was the moment you realized that block therapy belonged kind of outside your personal wellness journey and was a business opportunity?
It happened so block therapy was developed by a Canadian physical therapist, Deanna Hansen, and it is a body weight. fascia release. So it's compression of the fascia to create mobility and decrease pain. So fascias is at the highest level. It is one of our. It is the connective tissue infrastructure. So 30 odd years ago, they thought it was extra packing material in the body and they just went, oop, they just chucked it in, nothing to see here. And I would get in arguments with my osteopath about fascia because I was doing fascia, this stuff. I'd started to do it as part of my concussion healing journey. And that was because I went from being at rest for the better part of 20 months. And then when concussion healing turns out that is not much different from stroke victims. We don't tell people who have strokes to sit in the dark and wait until they feel better. We get them moving and get the blood flowing to the brain as quick as possible. It turns out Dr. Mickey Collins at UPMC adheres to this, and he told me when I asked, and this was circa 2017, so the data may have changed, but I said, "How long is rest indicated for people concussion patients?" He said at the time it was 2 weeks max, and so I had been at rest and then there was a lot of cardio. So a half an hour a day at cardio, up to an hour or 2 hour day of walking to rehabilitate my vestibular system. So my body was sore and crunchy and tons of lactic acid. That's another thing with EDS is my body doesn't clear lactic acid very well. And that seems to be another hallmark symptom. So if you work out and not only do you work out, but you're sore forever and you get this splitting headache because your body's not clearing it, that might be a little, hey, that might be one of the EDS weirdo things. So yeah, it became this passive body weight release of fascia release became something that became part of my practice since 2017. And then in when I was coming out of the pandemic, starting to consult again, helping business owners get unstuck in their business, and I would offer this as a body break. And people kept saying to me, "Well, gosh, you really need to do this. I have never experienced anything like this in my life. Like, what is this? How, like, you need to do this." And I kept going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and referring them to my teacher, and they kept saying that, "No, no, no, this is different." And then I started to also how I practiced block therapy changed, and I developed my own method. And full props, I've done the instructor training with Deanna, but we learned the basics, and then it's like any good chef, right? You learn the basics, you learn the ingredients, and then you create your own thing. And
Yeah, and so for the listener to visualize block therapy, explain that to us just a little bit. These look like what maybe people are recognize as a yoga block, which is used for a different purpose. But explain it a little bit because I think one thing that was helpful for me is that I have tried to use a racquetball or a
mhm,
lacrosse ball
yeah,
to break up some fascia or roll out my you know piriformis or something like that.
yeah,
That's pretty intense.
it's very intense.
What you do is a little bit different, but you use a block similar to like a yoga block, and
Yeah.
explain the method.
Yeah. So I like to joke that it's like a yoga block and a massage ball had a baby. So
Ah,
I took the stability of a yoga block, I rounded the corners, and I made them slightly wider. So the original sort of the block therapy wooden blocks they're a bit bigger, but also I practiced them because of my low back instability, which at the time I didn't know it was broken. I didn't know I had severe nerve damage in L4, L5, but I knew that my body didn't like the torquing or the single sided. So what I started to do was to take four of those blocks and use them all at the same time so that I could balance left, right, up, and down at the same time to avoid that spinal torquing. And also, I'm type A and impatient. So I was like, well, if I'm laying here using my body
do
weight
it all.
on this, whoa, what are we doing here? Like, why would I just do one at once when I can do four? So that's kind of how that was the origin of the four at once methodology. And then I started to learn about the nervous system. And so my teacher, Deanna, would say, make friends with your pain. I have done a full 180 from that. And that is because as I've learned about the nervous system, our nervous system does not, we have enough stress in our life. We do not need to create pain because pain creates stress. Stress causes a whole bunch of bodily effects, but at minimum, it produces cortisol and adrenaline, both of which are eating our muscles. They're catabolic because they're preparing us to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. Well, if we're doing this as a recovery mechanism, we don't want our recovery to be eating the muscles we just worked so hard to build, like those things. So it's a little bit like that no pain, no gain. on the gym floor. That worked. It's not that it didn't work, it's that there were side effects. And when it comes to pain and how people approach oh, it has to hurt or it's not working, yeah, I have different ideas about that.
It's softer and it's more focused on regulation of the nervous system, right? And so you take the yoga ball married with the massage, or the yoga block married with the massage ball, and you call it the unblock,
I do. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the name, and people can purchase these blocks from your website. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, they sure can.
Now you also teach some classes
I do.
here in Louisville, Kentucky.
I do.
So how do you want people to feel when they walk into a class or they use your unblock for the first time? What's that core experience that you're offering to your client?
I would say what they come in. So I joke that, you're going to come for your aches, but you're going to stay for the awe. So I open a class calming the nervous system. And the reason I do that is because I want to get you out of stress mode and into recovery mode so that your body's ready to receive the work, so that we're not trying to jam at muscles that are locked tight. We've started to at least let the body know that it's safe enough to let go. So that's how we open the class. But what people should bring, I think, is their curiosity. And I joke that my class is like, you're going to feel like a fish on a bicycle. There's nothing elegant about it. You're not going to know what goes where. It's like playing with kiddo, building blocks. I would love to use the brand name, but I don't. We'll protect your copyrights. But it's like playing with kiddo building blocks, and they can go. And the other thing I love about them is that they can adapt to different body shapes and sizes. I advocate very strongly. There's only two rules in the class: no pain ever. So, and what your body feels is pain is going to be different. My legs like more pain and they will settle into that. I would say they like more sensation. They will settle into that and I will get that ah response. If I do that same amount of pressure in my upper shoulders, in the traps or the rhomboids, they will fight back, lock down, and I will have a rebound headache for days. So meet your body where it's at, and then I invite heart brain coherence, which is has all sorts of health impacts. Huberman talks about it all the time, but with an even breathing pattern and a guidance to just experience a comfortable emotion. So I might invite joy or gratitude or appreciation. Just easy breath in, easy breath out, nothing fancy. And I ask people, like, so I taught class this morning, and I ask people always how to describe what they just experienced, and I always get, like, the cute, confused dog head. Like, they turn their head to the side. I get sort of the open sort of, and I see a lot of head churning, and people are sometimes that they can't really describe it. Even my own physiotherapist, when I had her do it, she said, "Huh, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. There is so much happening at the same time, and yet all we're doing is laying there and breathing."
What besides people? Obviously, this seems like you started the company and developed the unblock and started your classes because of your relationship with EDS and how it's been helpful to you. But what are some other common things that people come to your classes for besides just, EDS or like hypermobility issues that they have? What are some of the more frequent customers?
Yeah, I would say I have only had one or two EDS folks so far. Most people are more on the conventional spectrum of I'm tight and crunchy and I don't know what, I'm willing to give this a go. They've tried yoga, they've tried some of the other things and they're like, and or a friend cajoled them into coming, like experience this morning. Quite often it's activity. It can be activity based. So one of my regulars is a runner, and so this has become part of her injury prevention protocol for her to keep. There's common injuries in different sports, and so but yeah, it's that it- people come I think for different reasons, but anyone who has muscular tension of any kind, this passive fascia body weight release, it's a body weight massage. So there isn't anyone who doesn't, right? It's the pros, the hands-on people. I joke that they are the high fidelity surround sound system, right? They're great. They can be expensive, but there's nothing like that. But you can't take that with you. And so if you're only getting a massage a month, if you're, or less or more if you're lucky, but that doesn't hold for very long sometimes. So we needed something in between. So this was kind of my answer to that agency.
Well, when you walked in this morning, you had your bag with you had your unblock in there. And when we first met, I think that was one of the things that resonated with me is that you created I won't say a piece of equipment, but you created a mechanism that you can throw in your bag with you. You can make part of your everyday life.
Yeah.
What's a simple kind of beginner friendly routine with the unblock look like for someone who's never done any kind of work like this before?
Yeah.
Can you describe that over the airwaves?
Absolutely. So this is the evolution of a massage ball. So an unblock comes in two sizes. So one, if you have a little portable rectangular speaker, it might look like that. There's a larger size that looks more like a little bit like a smaller yoga block. And so if people go to my website at unwindbody.works, I have free classes on demand unlocked. So you can grab some rolled up towels and play along and see what it feels like to experience that body weight sensation, or sacrifice a pool noodle is another way to experience it. Don't use a massage ball. They hurt. Don't use a yoga block. They're pokey. But we're going to lay down on those for almost 4 minutes at a time. So if you imagine a massage therapist staying in one spot and with just enough of that right pressure for 3 or 4 minutes at a time, that's what we're doing. And you get to do it to yourself. And that is, to me, some of the most important aspect is that I'm there to teach people. You might some people might come to one class and go, "Oh yeah, I get it," and never see them again. Huzzah. Like, that's fabulous. I want agency so that people can take care of their own bodies. I'm not a guru. Somebody else here in town is a customer of mine. He has classes up online and he teaches in a very different way. He has more of an active, so he treats it more like a workout. But as more people and more professionals adopt this, then they'll develop their own ways of using them.
And because it's soft and gentle, once you have a little bit of you're kind of steered in the right direction, there's a lot of experiment, I guess, that goes along with it because it's going to be something different for each person.
Yeah, and I would say that the blocks are harder than people think they are. They're not squishy foam. They pack some punch. So it's my guidance that you shouldn't attack your body. I also offer alternatives in my class. I rolled up towel or a punolo because it can be too intense. A lot of people, I begin in the belly position, so just above and below your belly button, and that is to a whole bunch of reasons, but to mostly to cue diaphragmatic breathing and to get our breath out from our chest, which we do when we're in stress mode, back down into our belly, breathing diaphragmatically, getting that rich oxygenation from the bottom of our lungs. But a lot of people will lay on that, and I note that they don't call it our tender belly for nothing, and a lot of people can't lay on the unblocks to begin with. They need to begin with a rolled up towel or a poo noodle, something softer, stay up on their elbows and ease into that. Or as their body settles, their nervous system settles, then they can adjust. And fascia is a fascinating thing because it adapts every day to our stress, our hydration, our how much sleep we've had, what's going on with our nervous system. And so, just because you could do something one way yesterday does not mean that your body is ready to do that same thing the same way today. So, meeting our body exactly where it is, no forcing, just allowing, it's a very different mindset than using your body. I joke that there's a time and a space to use your breath to overcome your body. If you're running away from a bear, if you are trying to achieve a personal best, absolutely do that. This is not that time. This is a time to let the body lead and the body tell you what is enough and what's too much, and paying attention to those very subtle cues.
I'm working on a blog post for my website. It's part of what we also do here, and I'm working on a title. And the title I think is "You're Not a Machine.
No. Yeah.
You're a Human Being."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of central to the message of
Absolutely.
unblock, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with so much love to the people who've been practicing physical healing arts for a long time, they were taught that the body is a mechanical thing, that X pain equals Y result, and, that this is the source. But fascia winds chaotically through the body, and we all practice different things. You might have had a single-sided sport. You might have been a golfer or a hockey player or a volleyball player. How you move will very much respond to those fascia patterns that your body laid down to conserve energy, right? The reason our shoulders get all hunched over and tight is because we're hunched over our devices all the time, but our body um, helps reinforce that fascia in the front of our chest so that we can conserve energy staying in that position. It doesn't cost us as much energy. And so when we release and open the chest, we can release a lot of tension in our back because it's all stretched out.
I love it. I'm going to my wife Jessica, you also got to meet
Yeah,
her
I
over at
love her.
Molly's. She's in the
I
physical.
fangirled about her. I love your wife.
Yeah,
She's
she
so
oh,
great.
trust me, she's one of the best. She's been in physical therapy, ancillary to that in marketing for 17 years. I've been 10 years in the interventional chronic pain management space. And so, one thing that I'm going to do is that I have learned so much through you that I want to share with our patients, our providers, the physical therapists, the anesthesiologists that may be able to listen. I'm going to share this on LinkedIn. So remind me, say it twice, your website.
Sure. Unwindbody.works is the website.
Dot works.
Dot works, WORKS.
Okay, I don't think I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
All right. We're running out of time,
Mm,
but there's something that came up when we talked that I want to spend the next 5 minutes, if we can, diving into,
yeah.
switching gears here a little bit. But how do I want to say this? Your story, it's not simply about trauma or reinvention, it's about embodiment. It's about discovering that healing isn't a mental exercise; it's a nervous system recalibration. It's fascia, it's grief, it's part of us learning to coexist. And you've said it's about moving from life happens to me to life happens by me, and finally allowing life to move through me. And I
Mhm.
think you mentioned that you learned that by um, in February of 24, you watched a video from a guy by the name of Michael Beckwith.
Mhm.
So can you tell me a little bit about what did life happening through me unlock in you?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly candid, I would probably not be here if I had not seen that video. And the Reverend Beckwith video was, I made a deal, and he talks about the emotional journey and the spiritual journey. When we're kiddos, we're in victim mode. Life happens to me. Then there's the manifestation mode. Life happens by me. And then there's this next phase, and I realized as I listened to him that I had been doing by me. I'd been trying to direct everything, and so I made a deal. And so I said, "Okay, creator, universe, whoever's running the show, the quantum field, up there, I'm gonna open to this, and let's co-create. Let's let life happen through me." And um, it has shifted to being far more present. I used to, the 5-year plans and the this or that and wanting to see the whole staircase. And now it both trauma, grief, and everything also at the same time, I had to come into just knowing what the next best step was. At times when things were really hard, that window of the next best step was only 2 hours, maybe. As I got deeper into healing and deeper into surrender, that was, I could maybe have a visibility of a few days, but it enforced a need, an ability born out of necessity, but to remain present and open. And I would say that some of my grandfather's teachings from way back when of being open and curious about, and signs from the creator, signs from the universe of being open to nudges and paying attention to these things. I would say that I'm better at obey when I get nudges. I'll be like, I've been known to call someone and saying, I have no idea why I'm calling you or reaching out. I got a nudge. Here I am. Surrender. I'm still working on that. Eh, and I think it makes sense. But yeah, yeah, being present.
Yeah, and surrender, that's a little bit of a tricky conversation. I think the analogy that I have heard in Buddhism to what Michael Beckwith's message is that it feels like a lot of us are in a river flailing,
Mm-hmm.
trying to swim against the current or
Yeah.
fighting to keep our head above water. and going with the flow and letting the river just you relax and let the river take you where it's going to take you. It doesn't necessarily mean surrender.
Mm.
It doesn't mean laziness.
Mm-mm.
Like I'm going to sit back and
Yeah.
whatever my life
Yeah.
unfolds,
Hakuna
it's
Matata.
gonna I'm
Yeah.
Akuna Matata. Hey, I'm gonna look for the next sign, and otherwise I'm just gonna sit here and chill and
Yeah.
figure it out. No, we
No.
don't fully surrender. I
No.
think at any time, but it's that letting go.
Yeah.
I think you used the term in the video you sent me, let it be enough.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. When you say, can I let it be enough? For you personally, when you say, can I let it be enough? What are you letting go of?
I'm letting go of perfectionism for sure. And that was a big thing for me to learn is that it was okay not to know. It was okay to just do something justice. Uh, Done is better than perfect, right? Especially as an entrepreneur. My God, if we did things perfectly, we'd never get anything done. And we still catch ourselves in those little U turns of, yes, those are all part and parcel of the letting go.
Let it be enough.
Let it be enough.
That's something I'm gonna put in my pocket and carry with me the rest of
Living
the
rent
week.
free in your head.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think that's something that I can definitely remind myself of is it's okay just to let what is be present, be mindful, and just let that be. Not just let it be, but let it be enough. Okay, so there's two more questions I ask every guest,
Right.
and so we'll end the show with those today.
Okay.
I prepared you for this, so hopefully they
You
don't
did, and
catch
then
you
I
off
totally forgot.
guard.
So,
Okay, it's okay.
so here we go.
Um, so what would, and it doesn't have to be 25-year-old Melanie, but maybe it's 15-year-old Melanie, or maybe it's 30-year-old Melanie. I don't know, but younger version of Melanie Love. What would that person need to hear from you today?
Mm. So I was thinking about that, and your last guest said what my answer would have been, which would have been perfectionism. But I realized that the root of perfectionism is the belief that you don't have to earn love. Love does not need to be earned.
And maybe I would add too, for me, neither does rest or relaxation.
Oh gosh, gosh, yeah,
It's not a reward.
yeah,
It's part of the human
yeah,
necessity
yeah,
for being human.
yeah.
So I love that. One of the reasons that I started this podcast was that I always wished that, say, I could get on the internet and hear my grandfather's voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one day, hopefully, my children will look back at some of these episodes and they'll just, well, I don't know, they'll find some joy in hearing their dad's voice at a moment in time. But it goes another direction. So this conversation is preserved in the record of time. It's really cool to me that unlike talking to 25-year-old Melanie, there's a chance that if you save this, you'll be able to talk to 60 or 70-year-old Melanie at some point. You'll actually get to hear this. Um, what do you want your future self to remember about this season of your life?
Oh, remember about the season
Or
of my
maybe
life.
what do you want to make sure you tell your future self?
Oh, well, I know I would tell my future self thank you because I have learned the trick of handing off what does not need to be handled today and just trusting that my future self, even if that future self is 2 days from now, handing that off to future self. And it is a way that I deal with overwhelm and it's a way I lean into trust and co creation of handing those things off. And my future self has got this. So I would say, thanks, babe. You're killing it.
You rock.
Yeah.
Melanie, thank you. It's been such an honor to spend time with you. I love these conversations. I love hearing people's stories, and I could talk to you all day. And I think today's conversation, more than anything, it reminds me that healing is not linear.
Oh gosh, no.
It's also not purely mental. It's not always relational. It's embodied. It's cellular. It's I don't know. Poetically, it's historical, right?
Mhm.
But you and I and all the humans out there listening, we live in a culture that tells us to try harder, think better,
Mhm.
just push through,
Mhm.
right? No pain, no gain. But your work suggests something I think radically different that we should all be reminded of.
Thank you.
Soften.
Yeah.
Listen, listen to others, listen to yourself, listen to your body, witness, let it move through you.
Mm,
And maybe, just maybe, let it be enough.
mm.
Melanie, peace be with you.
Thank you. And also with you.